Satish, I have some feedback for you.
Just what I need.
Yes, I think that line triggers so many different emotions, mindsets, fear when we hear someone say that. And when you think of managers, leaders, founders today, feedback is almost this tightrope we've got to walk on, right? Or walk through. And in some places, we're almost doing it blindfolded. So it's incredibly difficult because there's this anxiety of, I should say the right thing. How do I not come across as being insensitive or out of touch? And with cancel culture and with this whole universe we live in today, that tolerance for top-down corrective feedback, get this right, this is how you should have done it, doesn't exist anymore, right? Like this one-way judgmental is gone, and this hierarchy of, hey, the only feedback should flow in this direction, it's almost a relic from a past generation. And this context and the playing field of feedback has changed.
Especially with the Gen Zs, right?
Yeah.
When you're sort of looking at the generation and thinking about feedback, one thing we really need to understand about Gen Zs is that they grew up surrounded by feedback.
Interesting.
Every picture they put out, every reel or every
You got
post,
immediate.
you got instant, immediate feedback without any filters. Now, if you're able to really put yourself in their shoes, for them, how they had to deal with or still have to deal with feedback had so many more layers. One way we can be very judgmental, saying, oh, are they too like cancer culture, not open to feedback? But actually, it's good for their self-preservation to build some boundaries and put some distance and say, okay, what is good filter? What do I allow? What do I don't allow? And it's very important for us to see that as a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Not just for them, but for all of us. And then you build on top of it. Not only are they having to figure this way out for themselves of how do I deal with this constant feedback, but they're used to it on the other hand. So now they enter a workplace, so the feedback happens once in 6 months or once a year.
Yeah.
Till then everything is hunky-dory, and then suddenly my boss comes with like a rating of 1. That is something alien to them. It's not real, it's not authentic. And then you want to top it up by saying the kind of feedback they get sometimes, because when you look at the old leadership style, feedback sometimes can be a tool of conformity. Hey, this is who you need to be. You need to be more like us. It's a demand to fit in. They're very sensitive to that. There's a difference between demand to saying this is you need to be more like this versus this is what will help you grow. And understanding that context is so important as you think about feedback.
So I hear you there. So what you're saying is it's not really the content of the feedback, but it's how it's delivered and how often it's delivered and the way it's packaged. That's a good starting point. A great thing for us to recognize is there is this new world. And I think it's calling us to a higher standard, getting better at talking about these difficult issues, right? Which is essentially some of core issues. And how do we create a safe space, a safe playground where this is a conversation to be had? Because feedback conversations, every company, every manager, every team should be having them. And how do you create a space where they actually flow and they're actually encouraged and that psychologically safe space for everyone involved?
Yeah. I think psychological safety is an important one, right? Because it's as simple as this. Feedback culture thrives where there is psychological safety.
Yeah.
If there's no psychological safety, it's very difficult for that feedback culture to thrive. It's always going to be that it's like a threat. And the other thing to remember is that you don't build that psychological safety during feedback.
Oh, interesting.
It reveals during feedback, if that makes sense. How do we build psychological safety? I think the bedrock is really the authenticity. What doesn't work is that fake empathy. Sugarcoating. You just see through it. Yeah, you don't need to be a Gen Z for it. And what definitely doesn't work in today's world is that sandwich technique that you were taught 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Of how you sandwich the constructive feedback between two good things you have to say about it.
The 2000 sandwich, right?
Yeah, and what throws them off is when it happens only that one time, when I have something nice to say to you, when I have to give you feedback, because I already know what's coming next.
Yeah.
Even if I am being vulnerable in terms of expressing that one-off doesn't work out, right? Vulnerability is not about one-off. It's about consistency. It's about patterns. And that's how you create authenticity.
So not one-off and don't sandwich it. I think the other thing I've seen, the skill that managers need to build and are learning to build with a lot of the people we work with is just acknowledging that there are going to be emotions to it, right? We're talking about issues that we both care about, right? This is your growth, my growth, the team moving forward. And emotions are going to come up. And to not see emotions is a bad thing. They are going to trigger something in you and me. And if it doesn't, that's the question to ask. Why are we not feeling strongly about it? But to navigate those emotions and to be okay with them, to hold space for them while being respectful for each other.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is, hey, can we create spaces for these conversations that we navigate them well and the emotions that come with it?
Holding space, right? I think one thing you need to understand about Gen Zs is they crave agency. So holding space is not doing feedback to them, but doing feedback with them.
Nice, I like that.
That's how you hold space. Feedback needs to go from this is something I need to give you versus how can we co-create that. It needs to go from being a monologue to a dialogue. So you need to really go from seeing it as a top-down to creating an ecosystem where everybody has space. There's a design to feedback to flow back and forth, right? Whether it's peer reviews, self-check-ins, and how do you normalize those two-way conversations when it comes to feedback. It's no more a mirror where you say, okay, this is a mirror I'm showing you, but it's a window where I get to peep into your perspective and how you're seeing it, and you get to peep
Explore it
into mine.
together, right?
And I think a couple of companies which have tried this way, Adobe is one. They have this whole ongoing check-ins model. Spotify has something called Spotify Rhythms where there's space for them to do this and more frequently, not just once.
I love that. The whole making it a conversation, it's a skill to really build, right? Because we come and saying, hey, this is my two-piece, let me say it and leave. To create a psychological safe space, one of the biggest hacks I've seen managers use is to approach feedback conversations with curiosity. Because the moment I come to it saying, hey, I already know the 4 things you've done wrong, that's judgment. And judgment will always lead to defensiveness. So to approach that conversation with authentic curiosity, saying, hey, I saw this happen. What is the reason? What was happening there? And they say it usually in feedback conversations, ask what questions, not why questions. The why questions come across like more aggressive.
Right.
Why didn't you show up? But hey, what was happening that day when this X, Y, Z didn't happen? So you almost describe the situation, describe the behavior, and then ask a question around it, and then have that conversation. Because these are sensitive issues.
Very true.
Very rarely are you going to give feedback on something trivial. These difficult conversations are on things which are sometimes core to us, right? Your identity, they're shaped with our past. But within that is also the opportunity that, hey, you can build connection when you talk about something deep. When we talk about something beyond just how was the weather today or traffic really sucked. And that opportunity of connection lies within every feedback conversation.
Yeah.
But we lose that when we come to it with, hey, I'm here just to be right, or I'm here just to tell you what I saw or my judgment of it. So that curiosity helps both of us take that journey and saying, hey, how can we build a better world for your growth, our growth, more systematically, right?
I love what you shared. The curiosity part, I have seen you do so well. You have been so intentional about not asking those why questions, but what questions. And that's something I really love about how you do it.
And I think for managers to have those conversations regularly, because once in 6 months, once a quarter doesn't work. It needs to be instant. Figure out, hey, what are things I can address quickly? And micro feedback. That's the term we use. And we say, hey, how fast can we discuss it? And when you normalize that micro feedback, it becomes culture.
Yep.
For us, after every corporate volunteering event, the team that ran the event sits together and immediately gives each other feedback. You're ripping the band-aid off and having that in the moment. You're not waiting for a week later for your Monday huddle. Once you do that, we've built a culture now where it's okay to have that conversation immediately.
Yeah.
And for the deeper, bigger issues with feedback, you do schedule them, all of that. Cargill USA also does that. They shifted from annual reviews to what they call everyday performance management, which is such a unique term when you think of it. Managers, coach, give feedback in real time. And they've seen huge results from it. 70% of their employees actually feel more valued. And it's boosted performance by about 40%, which is just incredible.
Yeah. I love that micro feedback. One of the things I usually talk about when you're thinking about that instant micro feedback is comparing it with brushing teeth to going for a root canal. Brushing teeth is easy, not expensive, it's not painful, and you do it every day. But when you don't do that and then you wait for one fine day, root canal could be very expensive, very painful, very traumatic. It takes a very long time to get the process done. And I think that's the power of micro feedback, and I love that you talked about it. The other thing is really frame your conversations as a growth conversation. Instead of framing it as through effort and performance, if you go towards strategy and learning and how can I grow, I think that really helps. And I think the other tool, just micro feedback, is feed forward. Malcolm Gladsmith is the one who popularized it. And I really like that because Your feedback almost has this feel of let's postmortem this,
Yeah.
everything that went wrong. But if you flip the script, right, you're saying, hey, actually this is a design space for how future can be better, how you can do better. And just flipping that could be so powerful just in terms of framing.
I love that. Feed forward is such a good reframe for what we've potentially always called feedback. The final thing for us when I think of how teams work together is this isn't a one-person wonder when you think of feedback, right? You want to build an almost what we call an everyone culture for feedback.
Yeah.
This isn't something that just a few managers do. You build a culture and rhythms and rituals for your entire team around it. Bridgewater, Ray Dalio's firm, had done this
Very well.
for decades now. And they have this thing called radical transparency. So anybody can challenge anyone else on anything. So a fresher can walk in on his very first day and challenge Ray Dalio, who has decades of experience in that space. And that is acceptable, right? And that is the norm. And I think for us to come to that space is going to be one of intentionality, is going to be one of conversations, and that you're continually building to this.
I love that. Everyone culture. I think that's a great place to really pause and reflect. So if you want to give feedback, a few things to keep in mind: psychological safety. How do I do the two-way feedback loops? How can I keep it micro and call it micro feedbacks and feed forward, not feedback? So let's think about that.